You're watching the World Report on NewsX World, and here are the top headlines. China has issued a stern warning to Japan over Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi's remarks on Taiwan, calling them erroneous and claiming that they have fundamentally damaged Sino-Japanese relations. Beijing demands Japan retract the comments and take corrective action. China will suspend imports of Japanese seafood as tensions escalate following Prime Minister Takaichi's comments. China, which considers Taiwan a part of its own territory, has strongly condemned the remarks. According to Ukrainian authorities, death toll from the Russian strike on Ternopil, a western city in Ukraine, has now risen to 19. The munitions had struck two 9-story residential buildings. Poland vows to respond soon to a railway explosion it blames on two Ukrainians allegedly collaborating with Russia. Foreign Minister Radoslaw Sikorski has condemned the attack as state-sponsored terrorism and stated that the response will include diplomatic measures. US President Donald Trump has stated that leaders from every major country will join a Gaza board of peace. The UN has approved a US-backed plan to end the conflict, authorize an international force, and oversee reconstruction. Meanwhile, Hamas reiterates that it will not disarm. Trump has stated that the United States and Iran will probably end up making a deal. Trump has offered no timeline but suggested that both sides may eventually return to the negotiating table amid ongoing tensions over Iran's nuclear program. Donald Trump has announced that the US will designate Saudi Arabia as a major non-NATO ally, unveiling the move during a White House dinner, honoring Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman and celebrating, in his words, the largest arms purchase in history worth $142 billion. According to Japan's Fire and Disaster Management Agency, a massive fire tore through more than 170 buildings in the Saganoseki district of Oita in Japan, forcing 175 residents to evacuate and leaving one person missing. The blaze, which began around 5:40 p.m. on Tuesday, prompted Prime Minister Takaichi to deploy a military firefighting helicopter to douse the flames. Well, viewers, those were the headlines in our top focus. The Kremlin has now declined to comment on a report claiming that the US and Russia have been secretly working on a 28-point peace plan to end the war in Ukraine. Now, according to this particular report, the plan, led by US envoy Steve Witkoff, aims to address peace in Ukraine, security guarantees, and future US-Russia relations. Dmitry Peskov, the spokesperson for the Kremlin, has dismissed any sort of media speculation, emphasizing that there was nothing new to share. The plan, which draws from discussions between President Trump and Putin in Alaska, could include contentious issues like territorial control in eastern Ukraine, where Russian forces are making incremental gains. Reportedly, the US has already briefed European officials, but the plan is still in early stages, and the parties remain divided over key issues. It is still unclear how Ukraine and its European allies will respond. Meanwhile, on the war front, Ukrainian authorities claim that the death toll from the Russian strike on Ternopil in western Ukraine has now risen to 19. The munitions, remember, had struck two 9-story residential buildings. This is the latest that we are tracking on the broadcast. We've, of course, reported just a while back that the death toll in this particular strike, the munitions which had struck two targets in western Ukraine, has now risen to 19. Volodymyr Zelensky has stated that the assault involved more than 470 drones and 48 missiles. Zelensky had in fact reported that residential areas were struck in the attacks, causing significant destructions and leaving dozens more injured. With us on the broadcast is Mr. Gilbert Doctorow. He is a Russian affairs expert joining us from Brussels. Thank you so much for taking our time and speaking to us on NewsX World. There have been some murmurs, some reports, speculations that the United States is working with the Kremlin to draft a 28-page peace point. plan, I beg your pardon. But Kremlin has declined to comment on this. At the same time, we've also been tracking that there are senior U.S. Army officials who are in Kiev. It's an unannounced visit. Army Secretary Dan Driscoll and Army Chief of the U.S. Staff General Randy George, they're expected to meet Volodymyr Zelensky, top commanders in Ukraine. They're also likely to meet Russian officials at a later stage. Both the White House and Pentagon have not really commented on this trip that is taking place at the moment. In your assessment, are back-channel talks still taking place with regards to peace? Of course, Russia has made it very clear that it wants the question regarding the territories it has gained to be resolved.
Well, it seems as though everybody on all sides in Western media, both mainstream and alternative media, drastically underestimate the ability of Donald Trump to outmaneuver the many opponents he has, even in his own party, even in his own entourage, like Mr. Rubio, and to get a peace done between Russia and Ukraine. Today's news has been contradictory. It opened with the announcement that Witkoff was going to meet with Zelensky, and that the Russians had been saying quietly that their views on how the war should end had been received and understood by the United States. All of that suggested that there has been secret diplomacy going on, as I would hope there has been, because the war is such a big issue and public diplomacy is not the way you solve these things. Mm-hmm. So it would appear that Mr. Putin's strenuous efforts going back to the Valdai conference to ingratiate himself with Trump have not been in vain and have not been pointless. That he and that is the Russian team and the American team were quietly preparing what is going to be rolled out today, again behind closed doors where it belongs. And indeed, the Americans have probably come around to the Russian point of view, notwithstanding Rubio's denial that Lavrov's version of the Alaska summit agreements was wrong. It would appear that it was not wrong, and that Trump has kept these cards very close to his chest and is now about to put them down on the table because he thinks he has the trump card. The trump card here, if I can be allowed this play on words, is the scandal going on in Kiev over corruption, yes, which is taken very seriously in the States and is even taken seriously in Brussels.
Indeed, you're referring to the energy scandal. We were discussing this on the channel just a couple of days back as well. One of the ministers had to resign, another was sacked as well. But in light of these quiet back-channel talks that are taking place, how do you think Europe is likely to react to these developments?
I think Mr. Trump is doing everything possible to keep Europe out of it. It is not surprising that this planned meeting with Zelensky is taking place immediately after all the damage of the corruption scandal has hit, and before the Europeans have their 15th or 16th of December meeting of the European Council to decide on providing this 145 billion euros in loan money, so-called, to Ukraine based on confiscated Russian assets in Euroclear. So the United States, by scheduling precisely now the time to lower the boom, as we say, on Mr. Zelensky, is doing it before Europe can get its act together. That's not accidental.
Indeed, sir. Requesting you to stay on with us as we're tracking further developments. Polish Foreign Minister Radoslaw Sikorski has stated that Poland will respond in the coming days to a railway explosion that it blames on two Ukrainians allegedly collaborating with Russia. He's described the attack as both sabotage and an act of state-sponsored terrorism, stating that the response would extend beyond diplomatic measures. The blast itself had occurred over the weekend on the Warsaw-Lublin line, which links Poland's capital with the Ukrainian border. Listen in to his statement.
Rosyjskie GRU rutynowo do swojej brudnej roboty wynajmuje podwykonawców pod fałszywą flagą. Tym razem był to akt nie tylko dywersji jak poprzednio, lecz akt terroru państwowego, gdyż jasną intencją było spowodowanie ofiar w ludziach.
Sikorski has also announced plans to withdraw consent for the operation of Russia's last consulate in Gdansk in response to the sabotage. Poland says that the two Ukrainians suspected of carrying out the attack have fled to Belarus, of course, an ally of Russia. The Kremlin has dismissed the allegations, accusing Poland of Russophobia, I beg your pardon. Poland, a major hub for Western aid to Ukraine, has been on high alert amidst the ongoing regional tensions. Listen in.
Во-первых, было бы совсем странно, если бы первым делом не обвинили Россию. Россию обвиняют во всех проявлениях гибридной и прямой войны, которые происходят. В Польше, скажем так, все пытаются бежать впереди паровоза европейского в этом плане. И русофобство, конечно, там цветет пышным цветом.
So with us on the broadcast is Mr. Gilbert Doctorow. Thank you for staying put. You've, of course, heard both what the Polish foreign minister had to say, as well as Mr. Dmitry Peskov, the spokesperson for the Kremlin, also had to say. What do you make of Poland pointing fingers at Russia? We do know that Poland has claimed that two Ukrainian nationals were involved who have now fled to Belarus, which is an ally of Russia. But of course, such cases, usually the probe takes time for the findings to be revealed properly.
There are so many accusations against Russia doing this and that in the so-called hybrid war, which is absolutely fictive and just something that the NATO organizers or leadership can throw at Russia because nobody understands what hybrid warfare is. Aside from all these accusations, you'll notice that Mr. Peskov did not deny that the Russians did it. He diverted attention elsewhere. And I believe there's a reason for it, because most likely the Russians did do it. And if they did, it's entirely justified, because this type of sabotage has been carried out within Russia by Ukrainian agents for most of the last 2 to 3 years. And the involvement of NATO member countries like Poland in these acts of sabotage is almost certain. Moreover, if this was done for purposes of impeding, inhibiting the delivery of Western military supplies to Ukraine, which is normal practice because Poland is the main point of access for all of these materials heading east into Russia, then it is what the Russians have chosen a rather innocuous way of inhibiting or providing obstacles to that passage. The more obvious thing that they could have, and maybe some people will say should have done, is to bomb the rallying points for all of this merchandise, for the jets and everything else that is being sent to Russia. This is just across the border from Ukraine in the Polish side. The Russians haven't touched that. So by not bombing and really creating an incident that Poland could go running to NATO and to invoke Article 5, if the Russians have disrupted the supply or shown that they can disrupt the supply, it's by a wholly innocuous mirror image act to what NATO has been doing to Russia.
Indeed.
So yeah.
Indeed, so go ahead. I'm about to take this point forward. There's another piece of the news that I did not touch upon, requesting you to stay put. This is, of course, a reaction that has taken place after this particular attack or the railway explosion. Now, Kremlin has expressed regret over Poland's decision to close Russia's consulate in Gdansk, describing the move as lacking sanity. Russian officials have condemned the action, which Warsaw announced in response to the railway sabotage that blamed on individuals collaborating with Russia. The Kremlin has called the Polish decision regrettable, framing it as part of what it perceives as an ongoing campaign of hostility towards Russian diplomatic and consular operations. Still with us on the broadcast is Mr. Dr. Rao. You were, of course, pointing out that such attacks have taken place within Russia as well. Therefore, it does seem that there might be a Russian hand in this particular attack. But what do you make of Poland's posturing? Is this some sort of signal that Poland is trying to send not just to fellow members in the EU that it is taking a tough stance, but also trying to send across the Atlantic to the United States?
Poland is taking this action. It's symbolic, as you called it, posturing, because it has very little practical impact on Polish-Russian relations. It's just a little slap on the wrist. However, I'd like to just call attention to one aspect of this incident that nearly all of your viewers will not have understood. How is it that this sabotage did not result in some catastrophic destruction of a Polish train or whatever, as happened in Ukrainian attacks on Russian train tracks 6 months ago? The reason is that Polish rail infrastructure is decrepit. And while they have bought for massive amounts of money wonderful Siemens new locomotives and trains, they never spent 2 cents on upgrading their tracks. And this tragedy was avoided because the engineer of the locomotive spotted that down the track it looked like there could be a problem. Well, he can only spot it if he was traveling 30 kilometers an hour, which is probably what was the case because the Polish rails are antiquated and money for the rails was never appropriated or stolen.
All right, Mr. Dr. Rao, with that, I'd like to thank you for taking out time, of course, explaining the entire context and providing a lot of perspective to us on NewsX World today. On that note, viewers, we're shifting our focus away from what's taking place in Europe to what's happening in the Middle East. We're now learning that U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff will now be meeting senior officials of the Hamas in Turkey's city of Istanbul. Now, the delegation will be led by Khalil al-Hayya, who is a member of the Palestinian Legislative Council, and the primary focus will be on maintaining the current ceasefire in Gaza. The U.S. is expected to reiterate its position that Hamas should disarm, with Witkoff likely raising this during the meeting. Now, Witkoff has previously stated that Hamas leaders indicated their willingness to disarm in earlier talks. However, the group has continued to publicly state that it is not prepared to do so. Moreover, Hamas has repeated this position again while criticizing the UN Security Council's resolution for implementing a stabilization force in post-war Gaza. Meanwhile, Witkoff has also been negotiating the safe passage of between 100 to 200 Hamas fighters as they remain inside a tunnel network under the southern Gaza city of Rafah. The U.S. has been pressing Israel to offer safe passage to these fighters if they give up their weapons. Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu has rejected the U.S. offer so far, and it also remains unclear whether these Hamas fighters are willing to surrender their arms in the first place. Now, this meeting in Istanbul will be Steve Witkoff's second meeting with the Palestinian politician al-Hayya. The first was held on the 9th of October in Egypt, which included the presence of Jared Kushner and other senior U.S. officials. It took place hours before the 10th October Gaza ceasefire agreement was finalized. With us on the broadcast is Mr. Yossi Cooper-Wasser, Israeli intelligence and security expert, joining us from Tel Aviv. Thank you so much for taking our time and speaking to us on NewsX World. Witkoff, of course, set to meet with a Hamas leader once again. stating the US's position as far as the disarmament of Hamas is concerned. We did see that in the vote that had taken place at the UNSC, it was practically a unanimous decision. There were 13 countries that voted in favor of Donald Trump's plan. There were 2 abstentions by Russia and China, but they notably did not use their veto powers, and there were no nays as well. In light of all of this, do you also expect the Turkish officials in Istanbul, where this meeting is taking place, who will be the mediators, essentially, to also apply pressure on Hamas to agree to the terms that Donald Trump has put forth?
Well, first of all, I'm not sure this meeting is going to actually take place, because the last rumors are that he's backing off from holding this meeting. And I think that, frankly, I don't think that there is a necessity for this meeting to be held, because the Hamas position is clear, the American position is clear. Hamas doesn't want to disarm, and by that they're blocking the ability of the United States to promote their plan, even though it was approved by the Security Council. With all due respect to the Security Council, without Hamas, this plan cannot move forward, and Hamas refuses to disarm. So the question is, what do you do about that? What Witkoff was trying to deliver to the Hamas leaders is that if they are not going to disarm, harsh measures are going to be taken against them, including giving a green light to Israel to take military action in order to disarm them by force. But this message can be delivered without this meeting. And on top of that, there are the mediators. The Turks can hold these meetings with Khalil Khaya without the Americans deliver the same message. So can the Egyptians and the Qataris, who are also serving as mediators here. The point is that there was some misunderstanding or intentional misunderstanding on behalf of the Americans. They were under the impression, maybe because that's what they were told by the Turks and by the Qataris, that Hamas is willing to disarm. Whereas Hamas says that he is willing to disarm if a lot of conditions that are never going to be materialized are going to be met. And then they are actually have no intention to disarm. And that's where we stand right now. And the entire plan is stuck because the Hamas, first of all, has not given back all the hostages. We're still missing 3. And second, it refuses to disarm.
Indeed, but what do you make of the UNSC resolution at large, the fact that both Russia and China did not use their veto as well? Does it sort of signal a consensus, a global consensus as far as Donald Trump's plan is concerned?
Yes, definitely. I think there's wide international support and even Arab and Muslim support to the plan, because everybody wants to see the war in Gaza coming to an end. And the plan speaks about reconstruction and about the improvement of the living conditions in Gaza, and everybody wants to see that happening. And the plan also is providing the security Israel is asking for and is entitled for after what happened on October 7th. And it's a good plan. It's in everybody's favor. That's a good plan. That's why everybody supports it. And it is also good because it's not going to be implemented under the UN. The UN has endorsed it, but it's not going to be responsible for implementing it. It's going to be the United States who's going to do that. And this is a good development, because we know that whenever the UN is in charge, it's never going very smoothly, and there are a lot of problems. And now that the Americans are in charge, there's a better chance that it's going to be implemented. But there's one obstacle on the way, as I said before. It's the Hamas refusal to disarm. We have to find a solution to that problem. The 100 to 200 terrorists hiding in the area of Rafah can be the first move in convincing Hamas to disarm. But so far it has not been achieved, even when it comes to those 200 trapped in the area under Israeli control. So we are waiting to see if there's going to be any development on the Hamas position.
Indeed, sir, requesting you to stay on with us as we're tracking some other very crucial developments. The E3 powers and the United States have recently submitted a draft resolution to the IAEA board. The text calls on Iran to provide clarity on its bombed nuclear sites and its enriched uranium stock. These sites were struck earlier in attacks that Iran blamed on Israel and the United States. Now, the resolution is expected to pass as early as Wednesday. It follows an IAEA report released last week, which emphasized that Iran has not allowed the IAEA inspectors into the facilities that were struck. Remember, there were 3 sites that were struck, Fordo, Natanz, and back in July by the United States of America that used the GBU-57 bunker busters. Iran has not accounted for uranium that it enriched up to 60% as well. Meanwhile, Iran has warned that it will retaliate against any resolution that targets its nuclear activities. Moreover, its delegation to the IAEA has in fact stated that this latest move could also affect its cooperation with the agency. This comes as Iran and the IAEA announced an agreement in September which was aimed at restoring inspections. Tehran has since declared that agreement is no longer valid. Stay with us on the broadcast is Mr. Yossi Kuperwasser, Israeli intelligence and security expert. Now, amidst all of this, we've also seen a statement by Donald Trump. He's stated that Iran will probably end up making a deal with the United States of America. Trump has not offered any sort of timeline, but has suggested that both sides may eventually return to the negotiating table. How optimistic are you of Trump's remarks at the outset? And I also wanted to understand from you, what do you make of this particular report, the fact that for so many months after the strikes, IAEA officials, the monitoring officials, have not been allowed inside these facilities to see how much uranium Iran has been enriching, because Iran claims that it's not doing so to develop a weapon. But if it isn't, then why the secrecy?
Well, the ambiguity about what happened exactly to the Iranian stockpile of enriched uranium is still with us, and ever since June. It's now almost 5 months now, more than 5 months since we attacked the facilities together with the Americans, and it's not much is known about what happened to the stockpiles. The facilities themselves were severely hit. President Trump says they were obliterated. I'm not sure if they were totally obliterated, but they were very severely hit. And in some of them, there were some stockpiles of highly enriched uranium to 60%, and including one facility that was dedicated for storing the highly enriched uranium, one of the facilities in Isfahan. Several facilities in Isfahan were hit, and one of them is used in order to store the highly enriched uranium. What the Iranians are doing now is that they refuse to allow the IAEA inspectors to see what has happened in those places. I'm not sure that they themselves know for sure what has happened, because the entrance to the stockpile storage was severely hit, and I'm not sure that they can enter. But they definitely would know better than anybody else what actually happened inside those sites. And they refuse to allow the International Atomic Energy Agency access to these facilities. So we are stuck with that, and all we see until now is the ongoing refusal to allow that. And this is the motivation behind the letter sent to the Iranians by the United States and the E3. And I think that on top of that, there's a question of whether Iran is going to be ready to negotiate and to reach an agreement that would be satisfactory to the international community and to the IAEA regarding the fate of their nuclear project. President Trump, as you said that they are willing to reach an agreement. They are interested in reaching an agreement. They are really ready to negotiate. That's very nice to hear it from President Trump, but there's no verification to that from the Iranians themselves. They refuse to conduct negotiations until now under the American conditions, because what the Americans and the international community demands from the Iranians is to give up their nuclear enrichment. And they insist that they would be allowed to be able to enrich uranium. And on that point, I haven't seen any agreement and any progress towards an agreement. So we don't know what's going to happen with this in the future. There was one Iranian official that said that they are willing to negotiate, but the conditions are still there. So I'm not sure that we are approaching an agreement anytime soon.
All right, so with that, I'd like to thank you for taking our time sharing your analysis with us on NewsX World. On that note, viewers, we're shifting focus to further updates coming in. We're now learning that Fly Dubai, the lower-cost sister carrier of Emirates, has stated that they have ordered 75 additional Boeing 737 MAX aircrafts in a deal worth $13 billion. The announcement comes after the carrier made a major purchase of 150 Airbus A321neo aircrafts for $24 billion. Now, since its first flight in 2009, Fly Dubai had only flown Boeing 737s, making the sale a major win for the European consortium. Sheikh Ahmed bin Saeed, the chairman of both Fly Dubai and Emirates, has stated that the proactive fleet planning is essential to ensure the airlines are well placed to meet the rising travel demand.